you mentioned before, obviously going to traditional film school, and the whole revolving essentially of disciplines in terms of people's responsibilities. And obviously coming from the broadcast days as well, where you don't get to specialize and say, okay, well, I'm strictly just going to be a character animator, or I'm going to be a hard surface modeler specifically for World War II tanks.
Yeah.
For you, because I'm always fascinated with this, like how impactful do you think it is for people to really learn the spectrum of everything before they decide to get boxed into a certain thing? Like my perspective of people's careers has always been start as a generalist, niche down at some point, but then eventually as you move into a CG soup or a VFX soup, you need to start to, vary a lot more, so that way you have a better scope of the whole pipeline. What is your take on how people should start out?
Yeah, I think that getting a taste of everything, I agree with you 1,000%. And I think that, when we're working with new people and, there's a lot of parts of the practical film process that are missing that we try to educate people with at Zoic, like lensing behavior.
Yeah.
What depth of field is, why you would choose this lens over that lens, lighting direction, lighting fall off, and how that affects scale, and the issues around painting with light. Those things, I think, even in a general way, are essential. And I put it this way because I've worked with people who struggle with this because they may not have gone to film school or art school or came into the visual effects from another thing, and they've kind of picked up some buzzwords along the way, but they don't quite understand how it all fits together. And here's what I think is a great exercise for any visual effects artist. Take the movies that have visual effects, or even not visual effects, just shots that you think are cool. Grab a frame, look at it, and describe what makes it exciting for you, why you think it's good. And then try to figure out what they did, what conscious decisions the artists that worked on this did to give that feeling to you. And I think that it can be that general, because it can get wrapped up in technology, can get wrapped up in technique. That is a downside of all the YouTubery. Like, why did you do this? A YouTube video said that that's the cool way to do it. And I'm like, I gotta say, this is a time when you need to use your eyeballs, not your brain. And that focus on why we're doing it from a general standpoint, aside from the task area, well, like that's for everybody in any task area. Because there's a lot of people that can push buttons a lot faster than I can and work a lot more efficiently than I can, and they don't have that conception of what the overall arching filmmaking techniques are. Because you need to know, if you're a CG supervisor, you need to know what the compositors are trying to do. If you're a compositor, you need to know like what the lights in CG do, so you can ask for what you need when you need a revision to make your comp look good. So everybody kind of needs that type of information. And especially if you're going to go into a supervisor, you need to know that. And as far as the technical stuff goes, it's probably a good idea to have a general working knowledge of even departments that you're not in. And if you're going to be a supervisor, you kind of have to know a lot. We're pretty good at Zoic of being pretty even-handed. Like our supervisors, usually our path is CG supervisor to DFX, CG supervisor / comp supervisor to DFX supervisor to visual effects supervisor. And we're pretty evenly split between where they come from, CG supervisor or 2D supervisor. But when they make that transition, that's the first thing, like, how much do I need to know about this other department that I've been interfacing with? And my thing is, you don't need to know every button in Houdini to be a visual effects supervisor or DFX supervisor if you're coming from 2D, but you need to know what to ask for.
No, just to touch on that, because I think you're 1,000% correct. It's up and down, because the more that you learn where things are coming from, the more that you can actually speak to those people in terms of how perhaps you might need things better. Let's just talk about effects like destruction. Hey, modelers, can you give us closed, clean meshes rather than, something that's just kind of hideously thrown together? But at the same time, the more that you learn about where things are going, the more that not only can you communicate with them, but you can also think ahead as to how you could make their life easier. And as you move up, you're right, you're going to need to, let's say working in visual effects as a VFX supervisor, you're going to need to learn how to work on set in terms of relationships as well, but how a lens works, all the other aspects that tie into what you're doing, because if you don't know those things, then you're not going to know how to receive things or what to do with them.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's always about the 360 of like what's immediately around you.
Yeah.